Not used to all this stuff. It was interesting this morning. I don't choose the songs, the worship leaders do that, and their first song this morning was I Will Make Room for You. And that was a song that just kept being played here and singing, and when God was trying to speak to me about things, and I was giving him lists of reasons why he'd made a mistake. And that went on for some months, by the way. But in the end, I realised that God was saying, you know, all I want you to do is make room for me. And that's how this thing started. And it has been an amazing journey. I don't know how long it's been now, 18 months or something? Yeah. It started, as Anne suggested, in the home group. I won't talk too much because the reason I'm late is because I talk too much at Pocono. But I'm a little unskilled at all this, so you'll have to bear with me. So started in the home group, and then I said, well, this is, I had to say to him, well, this is what I've been thinking, and this is what I think God is saying to me, and it just started there, and then moved. And then, so for the last 18 months, I've been working to create this Crossroads of Pocono. And this, I'll flick through some of the initial stuff, which is more about what the plans were, and they haven't changed a great deal. There's been some change in emphasis as facts have come in and things have moved around, and also as people have arrived, people turning up with different skills, and it's just amazing. We pray for something and someone turns up, I see myself as more a facilitator than anything else, because we need the church, the people of God, and the Pocono community to be the kingdom of God in the Pocono community. And that's not one person, who's just had a birthday and is probably past it, but it's actually all of us making the contribution that we can. And we all have different skills. So which button is it? Is it the up button? Oh, no, that's backwards. Okay. Help me. Yeah. So I pressed the up button. You show me which one it is. I don't want to do this again.
I never use it.
No one uses it. I can see why.
That's the next.
Which is it?
The down.
Oh, down, not up.
Yeah.
All right. Counterintuitive. Thought I would have got there, eh? So we had two objectives. One was to create a worshipping community in Pocono, and that revolves around a Sunday worship, and an objective in there, as I said, which is to build people in, to draw people, the people that God has already marked out to join us. So, that's our objective, to draw them in, and to start our home groups. Our home group, which has really been great, but it's too big now. We're sort of at somewhere between 18 and 22, and it just loses its intimacy, if you like. So we're exploring some new home group locations, and also some things. We're getting people that are coming in that are new Christians, just born again. So we'll need some training and some building capability for the projects that we've got in mind. And then there's our community engagement program, and I think I spoke to you about this. I don't want to repeat myself because you'll get bored and all go and have coffee, which is not a bad idea actually. Is that when God was first speaking to me, it was from Isaiah 61, and I'll go through that a bit later. But it was actually I interpreted it as actually about getting into the community and understanding what it's about. So I did that. And out of that became this concept called the storehouse, and the biblical imperative that I felt was for that was that when Jesus talked about the kingdom of God, he talked about in one part about yeast being kneaded into the greater amount of flour so that actually it had an effect and the whole loaf was raised. So that was the biblical imperative for that for me. So from here we're about to move, and we've taken the premises to commence phase 1 of 3 phases in it. And so the storehouse was born, and we have a council program, or a council property at 1 Market Street, which is either one step away or not at all from derelict. But we're getting together. It's manageable, isn't it, Bruce? Yeah, there you go. He's a positive thinker. So our concept for that is connecting groups, reaching across all those silos, and wherever we create them, is to make it a place where the community can come. And we especially want to reach out to those that are standing in the margins for whatever reason it is, and for all of those silos that I talked about that we create with our prejudices and our misunderstandings. So we want to stand with those people and understand what it is we can do to help. And we want to establish at the core is this community of cherished belonging. And I'll go into that a bit later, what that means. And I've stolen that term from someone who I'll explain later. I'll probably apologise to them at some point. So phase 1, which is what we're engaged in at the moment, and the first cab off the rank is a men's shed, and it's a secular organisation. What we want to see is we want to see people drawn in, and then we want to create relationships. Then we want to understand what their needs are, and then we want to build them into our community. We want to become a bridge, if you like. Community garden is very close behind that, if not simultaneously, and we get quite a bit of interaction with social agencies about food security in our area and people that are in need, and we really struggle to do that. And what we would like to do is to engage people to come in and be a part of that solution, and part of what and to become part of what Pokeno is. And we want to run off that education programs, but not just for youth, but for youth. And we definitely want to use the philosophy of permaculture, which has a story in its own of creation, and we can tell that story in a non-religious and non-threatening way, because we're talking about what God created and His way of doing things from the origins. We started this trail clearing, doing work on the Te Aroa Trail, and we've had a lot of discussions with them about expanding that into an employment project with the support of a couple of government agencies and a charitable funder. We think we can put that in place. Probably take us a year to get that up and running, but again, the unemployment, especially in youth in Pokeno, is high. But the challenges are great because, how do I say this? There are reasons why they're not employed. And if we want to build them back in, we have to address those reasons. We have to be able to reach out and be able to help them through that. And the other thing that came up, especially around this employment thing, is youth. The youth in Pokeno are not catered for at all. And we've done a couple of things. We've done a sports event in combination with a Tuakau youth group and a Merry youth group, and we will continue that collaboration. It will be more of a community youth group rather than a church youth group, because our objective here is to engage. It's actually not to give them 3 spiritual laws or 4 spiritual. Is it 3 or 4? I can't remember. As they walk through the door. So it's for us to get engaged, to create a relationship, to make that bridge across, and then the yeast can mix with the flour, and the loaf can raise. And phase 2, I'll just flick through these. These are in the future, and they will be dependent on getting things up and running. And you'll see that a lot of them are support systems that are around what we're talking about in general principles. And then phase 3, to make this thing work long term, we need funding, and we need something that's self-supporting, that we're not having to bow to the dictates of either government agencies or funders or whatever. We're prepared to be flexible at the moment, but eventually we want a social enterprise that can do things in the community, and then outside of that, fulfill the needs of the community around employment and all those other things, but then to be able to be more independent about our decision making. One thing that I am personally really passionate about is the recidivism rate in not only New Zealand prisons, but prisons around the world, and the worst of which is the United States, who promote higher sentences and all of the vindictive approach to justice. And those that you know me know that I have come from a law enforcement background in my earlier days, so I'm not, law and order are absolutely important, and it's important for people to be obeying the laws of their land and for people to feel safe and protected, absolutely. But this is an indictment on us if 56, 57% of people with previous convictions get reconvicted within 2 years and are back inside. There's something wrong there, and making the sentences longer is not going to go to help. They will probably go and do that, but what we're finding, there's a couple of programs that are identified around that when offenders come out of incarceration and are built into a community, and they get employment and they get accommodation, the recidivism rate drops through the floor, and so it's not something that government's going to promote, but it's something that our church can, or organisations can, and around that is skills training. So keep an eye on the time. So that's our property on the top left. You see a house and 2 sheds, and it may even be more overgrown than that because that's an oldish photograph. We're going to share the property with a council department who may or may not ever arrive, because from what I can understand from my dealings with council, the left hand never knows what the right hand is doing. So we will just continue on. If they do occupy that place, you'll see that the paper road on the top left again. They will put a driveway in for an exclusive access for our activities. Where do I? Oh, wow. Really developing my skills today, Raphael, thank you. Oh, there, yeah, thank you, yeah, there. So that's the project. It's, we're at ground zero. So we're into it. Anyone who may be interested in having a look, we're there at 8:30 next Saturday morning for another 4 hours till 12. Or people come and do an hour because they've got an hour to spare, and that's cool. Come and do what you can if you want to, and meet the people and see what we're doing. We're doing a different raft of projects this week. So, this is the process. We've kicked off, we're engaged. I'm not going to go through all these, but you can read them quickly. January, we're getting engaged with those programs that we're talking about. July, we'll evaluate, we'll see how we're going, any adjustments that we'll need to make, and we will keep working on the models further down the track. Oh, yeah. And then we just want to put these milestones in place so that we don't just drift into, getting bogged down into where we're going. Keep the vision in front of us so that we know what we need to do. And then in April in 2026, we'll evaluate all of the plans and then reformat everything that we're doing. So that's the plan, the organisational plan, if you like, of what we're doing, and a little bit about what we're doing. I won't go through all this because you can read. So what I want to talk about is our mandate, and we were talking this morning at Pocono about what that is. For me, this was the key verse that God used to speak to me, and that's how it morphed for me into what I should be putting my hand to. And then, of course, as a result from doing that work, and this one particularly spoke to me. Pocono has got a history in the Christian church. In the settlement days, the church was very strong. It had a great presence in the community. It donated the land for the school and for the current tennis courts, the materials and the land for the town hall, which had been burnt down, and they were engaged and involved. So in terms of rebuilding that foundation that they put down is certainly a part of what I think we need to do. And in terms of us as a church, when Jesus gave his first message to the disciples and took them up on a hill, this was his first long sermon to them. He started with this. He started about talking about taking these values into the community. And he wanted them to be salt and light. But of course they didn't see it. They certainly didn't see it then in that context, because they were looking for a Messiah that was going to come and replicate David or Solomon, who was going to throw the Romans out and overturn the government and make Israel a focal point of the world again. But that was not God's plan, was it? So Jesus was announcing that their vocation was going to be different to what they thought his kingdom was going to be about. These things, light, salt, and yeast, I don't think they had any clue about what he was talking about. I don't think they had any idea at all. Do you? Because their behaviour from there on didn't reflect that. So, welcome to the human race, I guess. So, Professor Wright, whom I've been a keen reader of his books in recent times, he makes the statement. I wasn't sure when he first mentioned it, whether I agreed with it or not, but I've come to buy into it, I guess, that Jesus rules the world today through those who, or has done in church history, through those who launch new initiatives. And he's got some very sound biblical views around that, which I won't be talking about this morning. But and whether you agree with it or not, it doesn't matter, because initiatives done in the name of God and in the spirit of Jesus' ministry to us are effective. And here's some examples. William Wilberforce, over centuries these are. He campaigned against slavery, and tirelessly until he got that through the British Parliament. Martin Luther King, he campaigned against racism in a non-violent way. and he ended up being murdered because of it, assassinated because of it. But he raised the issue of racism front and centre, and from then there's been a huge amount of work that's had to be done to bring us to that place of accepting that it's totally and utterly wrong. Desmond Tutu, he worked to end apartheid, but he also worked to end apartheid, and his philosophy of truth and reconciliation was fundamental in South Africa not becoming a bloodbath after the change in power. And it's certainly not perfect now, and if you, for those of you who are here that are South African, and you know, and you hear things that go, there's some appalling things going on. But his view was that it could be done. Unfortunately, those guys were quite old and didn't have the energy or the time to get through it. Cicely Saunders, you know, a Christian lady who had a passion for the terminally ill because they weren't catered for. It's now a global organisation, and we all have the benefit of that. So there are other projects that happen around and under Christian banners, and some wonderful projects that go on, and they're being the yeast, if you like, in the communities that they serve, and they give us an opportunity to tell our story. Whereas, you know, I don't know what the statistics are. I don't think anyone ever measures it, but the number of invites that are made to people to come to church versus the ones that people actually turn up are probably pretty low, because we have to go out and we have to be those people before the credibility is there for them to bring in. There's heaps more projects, as you'll think of some that I've not mentioned, and there are literally thousands of them. So this is how the sovereignty of Jesus, this is what we think, how the sovereignty of Jesus is going to be put into effect in Pocono. It's going to be doing the things that we're talking about. And when Mary was singing the song, was this a prophecy, you know, about Jesus' ministry? Because it must have come straight from the Holy Spirit, because what else in that time would have thought that he was going to become to exalt the humble and the meek, and certainly fill the ancient promises and send the rich away empty. So on the day that Jesus went into Jerusalem, you know, the weekend of him being crucified, there were two processions on that day. There were two kingdoms on display, two different value systems. There was Pilate, representing the Roman Empire. And their values are those. You know, violence and brutality. They were the largest world empire. They were full of pomp and ceremony and self-promotion. And then there was Jesus, who rode in on a donkey. He was on a recovery plan for his Father to reinstate the world, the creation, the way God wanted it to be originally and planned it to be originally. And he was also representing God's new way of operating, with humility, working with us, non-violence, grace and mercy. He made himself vulnerable, asks us to do the same. He was gentle, and he operated in powerful, self-giving love, the ultimate self-giving love. So if you look at the power of the state at the moment, it is drowning in Western democracies that I know about, and probably all around the world, because the state and the political agendas, they have no core. There's no fundamental belief that drives them that will make things better. And it's often been overtaken by selfish ambition and agendas, as we know. But in many countries, the state has assumed responsibility for these things that we've just been talking about. And it's a question, has the state become a secular shadow church by providing these things? Have they displaced what we should be doing in some part anyway? And we can be in danger of forgetting that these tasks are part of what we should be doing. There's an organisation in Los Angeles started by this guy called Father Greg Boyle, who's a Jesuit priest. Another guy, an organisation I've been really looking at closely, because they have the largest gang intervention program in the world. They have the largest tattle removal business in the world, because all of the people that come through there are ex-gang, ex-incarcerated people with very difficult histories. And he got thrown into them as his parish with 8 warring gangs. He was doing, in his initial stages, he was doing 3 funerals a month for the people in his parish from gang violence alone. It was just mayhem, social mayhem. And he started in, how am I going to change this? And working with and really understanding what it was, how things had really gone wrong. So in some ways, a different opportunity, but we have an opportunity of putting our imprint on Pokeno to display God's kingdom. You know, one of the issues that we all face is this issue of tribalism, and it's at the root of a lot of the issues that we actually have to face and deal with every day. And it's not confined to ethnicity. You know, it crosses boundaries, social boundaries, ethnic boundaries, all sorts of boundaries. And people that don't fit into a tribe of some sort or don't find they find themselves flung out to the margin, and that driving that separation and loneliness. And it actually embeds itself in our community. And I've just in 18 months of what it's been, and getting into the community, realising how many people are absolutely isolated, sitting in their nice home in Pokeno, no connections with other human beings of great meaning, depressed, lonely, and definitely feeling marginalised. And there's some research done, and this US Surgeon General has nominated loneliness as a pervasive health issue, and he's really working with the health officials over there to put some data together to work out what it is. And essentially, I would submit this morning that loneliness is not just about being on your own. It's largely about not belonging to something or to anyone or to being valued. So there's another lady in the US who's connected with the unhoused, running some very large programs over there. And her observation is that people don't become homeless because they run out of money, but they run out of relationship. And you know, relationships should be our stock and trade in the church. We should be the people that are best at creating relationships and the meaning around relationships. So, you know, we've got to be careful how we represent ourselves, I think. I mean, do we resile from the truth of what the gospel is? Absolutely not, because that is it. But culturally around the church, you know, you see that statement up there. I've seen it a number of times. A lot of people who find God believable, but the church unbearable. Jesus appealing, but the church appalling. And then the media supports us, of course, by dragging the odd, the person, that leader that fails, and they get paraded in the streets, and the media has been, the Christian leaders, and then of course that just denigrates what we're doing and what we are trying to be. We have to be the church in our community. That's what I think. That's what we're thinking and talking about in Pokeno. And we don't want to hold the bar up for people and tell them to measure up. We want to extend to them this opportunity for cherished belonging, of belonging to something. That statement down the bottom there is at the end of a story of one of the gang members who had spent, I think he was something like in his mid-30s, he'd already spent 17 years in prison, a lot of it in solitary confinement. And he was talking about what Homeboy Industries had done for him. And he said, I am used to being watched, but not being seen. And in the context of that Homeboy environment, that cherished belonging relationship, he was talking about he is now being seen as a human being, as someone that can be cherished and belongs. So that's what we would like to do. We would like to create this, and it's going to overlap, if you like, with our church community. It has to, because we have to be engaged and we have to be there. It's not a social program. It's a community, including community in what we're doing. God is inclusion. I believe that. One of Greg's, I'm not sure whether I can agree with that. His belief is that we are all unshakably good. I prefer to think is that we're all made in the image of God, because that's what it says in the Bible. I've not been able to find that, Greg, but if I ever meet you, I'll ask you about that. But we are all made in the image of God, and we all are made, and we all can be redeemed, regardless of where we come from and what we do. We belong to each other. And that feeling of kinship, we have got to develop that to heal people. And for us, it's a way of seeing people, the person that's standing before you. And we need to communicate to them, God's message to them, that you're precious in my sight. They won't know about the love of God at all unless they're shown it by us. It just won't happen. They won't come across it, and that is our mandate. So, I'm quoting him a bit, aren't I? God's dream come true. I spent a lot of time in his books over my break, and I couldn't put them down because the stories of people changing their lives, thousands, tens of thousands of ex-gang members being changed and living productive lives and believing in God. And Jesus had this passion for unity, that we become one, as he is one with the Father. And in the Psalms it talks about us dwelling together in unity, and the Lord commanding a blessing. So cherishing is love fully engaged, love with its sleeves rolled up. We need to roll our sleeves up. And to put some words around love, because love can very easily be diminished into something different to what God's concept of love is. And the greatest thing that I can think of displaying the love of God is to love my neighbour as I love my child. I read this again recently, this famous chapter, and I got to say that I just saw things in it that I'd never seen before, about what love actually is. And it's easy to just institutionalised our beliefs and our passion and our beliefs and our doctrines. But this goes to the heart of the gospel, and it goes to the heart of what we need to do and we need to be. So creating this community, it starts with the house of God. It starts with us. And do I think this is going to be easy? Of course it's not. There's more challenges in there than I've had breakfasts. But the fact is, that shouldn't be a reason why we don't try and we don't get on with it and do it. And we will have to pray for a huge measure of God's grace and His provision for us to make this work. And we will have to, in our journey, and we will have to journey in this, become what He has marked us out to be in His plan for us. And that's our passion. It's my passion that we, as Pokeno group, will join together and become what God has wanted us to be and do what God wants us to do in our community. And in the end, we will be better people. We'll be better people for facing this, and God's kingdom will be displayed in Pokeno. That is our passion and our desire. And we, this is a message that I presented to our group in Pokeno. But it's a universal message, I believe. I believe that the heart behind this and the heart behind about what Jesus was talking about, this is just putting maybe some Pokeno bones around the flesh or inside the flesh to hold it up. So that's what we're about. And and I believe that we can do this and we can do it together, not one person, not a small group. We've got people arriving at our group almost every week now, new people with different skills, and it's really astounding. And so our structure, our leadership structure will change up there. My role will change and morph into something different, but there will be people being able to step up and take pieces of what I'm currently doing, and for me to be able to do what I'm probably better trained to do, better follow what my knowledge and experience has been. But God doesn't ask us. He doesn't ask us for our ability. He asks us for our availability, and sometimes that's all we've got to offer Him. But that is all He wants. So if anyone wants to be engaged in this in any way, in a small way, we see ourselves as being a connected church. We're happy to welcome you in and put your shoulder to the wheel if you want to. But you've got your own mission here and your own community to serve and your own vision, and we realise that. But together we can pray and support each other, and we will build the wider kingdom, if you like, together. So thank you.